History happened everywhere. A random country, a random time period, and a topic pulled from the hat. Then one of us has a week to go away and find out everything they can. Welcome to... History happened everywhere. Hello, you're listening to History Happened Everywhere with me, Pete Goddard, and him over there, Ryan Weir.
Hello!
It's the first week of a new year, 2021. Happy New Year, Ryan.
Happy New Year to you, Peter.
So, any New Year's resolutions?
Yes, I have. My New Year's resolution is to travel more. I know that seems a bit redundant.
With regards to lockdown. Not in the very near future, but the time will come, I'm sure.
Yeah, I want to jump on a plane and travel somewhere. I want to not be in my flat anymore.
I think that sounds like an amazing idea. I once did a round-the-world plane ticket.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. When
Are you Phileas Fogg?
I am. It took me less than 80 days, in fact. So, if anything, I'm better than Phileas Fogg.
I think I got a round the Essex bus once, and it just sort of went to Chelmsford and Colchester, and
which is almost as exciting as a round-the-world plane ticket. I mean, what haven't you seen of Essex? You have to ask yourself.
I've seen all of it now.
So you've had a week, obviously. How's your week been?
It's been really good. I've spent a lot of time researching Liechtenstein.
Yeah, you did have that extra week, of course, which was courtesy of me.
You're so kind. Thank you so much for taking my week up.
Yeah, sorry. Should we have a little look back last week, see what it is you had to look into?
Yeah, let's rewind time. Okay, the Derslater is awake. And the country for me next week is... Lichenstein.
Wow. Well, let's have a look at
there's Lichenstein.
The history happened everywhere, Ryan. We know this.
Okay. All right. So let's go with the years then. Okay. Here we go. And the years are... right. Well, we're continuing the medieval stage. It's 1100 to 1200.
Ooh.
So it is Lichenstein. Between the years of 1100 to 1200.
What is the topic, Ryan?
The topic is...
going to be...
Oh, no.
Space. Something crazy.
And the topic is... business.
Ooh.
That's the first time we've had business.
That is.
Okay. I'm thinking already.
Good, because you have a week to keep thinking and come back and entertain me for a solid hour. Okay, so Ryan, Lichenstein.
Yeah, it is. This is the third part of our Alp trilogy. The famous Alp trilogy. Yeah, we've had Austria for the past 2 weeks. And this week we're going to remain within the Alps themselves. We're going to talk about a very tiny, weeny little country called Liechtenstein. Or is it called Lichenstein? Or is it called...
Liechtenstein?
Liechtenstein.
No.
Yeah. In Liechtenstein, it's referred to as Liechtenstein. They don't call it Liechtenstein.
Liechtenstein.
Where they live. Yeah, that's right. Liechtenstein.
Liechtenstein. Are we going to try and maintain that throughout?
No. No. We're going to swap between the German, which is the Lichenstein, and the Western, which is more Liechtenstein.
Okay.
Because I can't settle on one of those two.
Okay, so let's just start with a blanket apology to everyone we're about to offend with various pronunciations
Everyone
of your
from
country.
Liechtenstein. Yes. So it's officially the Principality of Liechtenstein.
Ah, Principality. Do we know what a Principality is?
I should have looked that up. Not off to a great start. Well, this is going to be a long episode, everyone. Strap in. Here we go. Right. Where is it? It's in Europe. You know Europe?
I'm aware.
Are you aware of Italy?
Yep, big fan.
You know it's like a boot shape?
Yes, it is.
At the very top of the boot is the Alps.
Thigh high.
Yeah, the thigh-high boot. Yeah, it's like the Alps.
On the inner thigh.
And you go just slightly north of that, and you've got Austria and Switzerland.
Yes.
And sandwiched betwixt the two, you find a very tiny little area of land called Liechtenstein. It's one of only 2 double landlocked countries in the world.
And what, pray tell, is a double landlocked country?
So a landlocked country is where you ain't got no sea on either side of you, so none of your borders are touching the sea.
Yep.
And a double landlocked is where none of the countries that surround you also touch the sea either.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you're double landlocked. Any idea what the other country is? Uzbekistan, that's right.
Oh,
Very good.
I'm glad you didn't wait for me to
Amazing
get that.
2/3 of the country is mountainous.
It is unsurprising for the Alps.
Well, yes, quite. It rises to a maximum height of about 2,599 metres. That's 5 empire states on top of themselves.
Wow.
Anyway, you picture Liechtenstein, you're going to picture mountainous regions, so peaks covered in snow, lower slopes covered in pine forests, beautiful wildflower meadows.
Do we have lakes?
No.
Oh.
Well, there is one lake, but it's super tiny. It's more of a pond.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not going to account for that. But we will be talking about a lake at some point. Think Sound of Music.
Can I think Heidi?
You can.
Okay, I'm thinking
Sure, if
Heidi
you like.
and the Sound of Music.
I mean, this is the thing, right? It is sandwiched between Austria and Switzerland. So if you're thinking of either of those, you're onto a winner. The River Rhine, the Rhine River, runs the length of the country, south to north, on its way to Lake Constance. We were talking of lakes there. Also known as Lake Obersee, which means upper lake, which is a bit weird because it's at the southernmost point of the lake. It's the 3rd largest freshwater lake in Europe, and you could fit 71 Liechtensteins in Lake Constance.
In the lake?
In the lake itself, yeah. It's that big. It's pretty huge. So Liechtenstein is a micro-state, as we've said, very small, Europe's 4th smallest country. Can you name the other 3?
Monaco?
Correct. Number 2.
Other places?
Vatican City, number 1.
Oh, of course.
And San Marino, number 3.
Yes.
That's exactly right. So, 4th smallest country. It's 62 square miles, or 160 square kilometres. It's teeny.
How do you even make a country so small a country?
Well, I guess we'll maybe find out.
I'm hoping we will.
How many Liechtensteins to a France? I know you're dying to know.
I'm dying to guess.
Go on, go for it.
120.
I mean, you're way off. Cold.
Okay, then I don't want to guess anymore. I've looked silly already.
It's 4,024 Liechtensteins in France.
That's a lot of Liechtensteins.
Yeah, it's a lot. The population in 2020 is just 38,000 people.
Wow.
38,000 people live there, of which in the capital city, which is called Verdus, there are 6,000 residents.
Oh, really? I kind of had in my mind it would just be one big city with a few outlying people. Oh, okay.
No. In fact, it's not even the largest of the towns. The largest municipality is Schaan in the north with 6,500 residents. So just slightly
so even
larger.
that's still pretty tiny.
It's pretty small. Yeah, Verdus, a capital city. It's home to the prince and the government, as you might expect in a capital city. It's the only country in the world... the only capital city in the world that has no airport or train station.
No train station?
No train station even.
Wow.
You want to get there, the closest you've got to go is to Zurich, which is 120 kilometres away, and then, I guess, bus it.
You mentioned a prince. I think that it may be the definition of a principality.
Yeah, probably, right?
Because we have a Prince of Wales, don't we?
Yeah, principality. That makes sense. German speaking, Swiss German.
It's unsurprising in a place called Liechtenstein, isn't it?
Yeah. And the currency is Swiss francs.
Oh, right. So they're sort of slightly adopted by Switzerland.
They touch a little bit of all the stuff that's going on. But yeah, German speaking, Swiss German. They have a semi-constitutional monarchy headed by the Prince of Liechtenstein. And go and ask me what a semi-constitutional monarchy is.
So, Ryan, I was wondering, regarding semi-constitutional monarchies,
yeah,
what are they?
I don't know. No, I do know. This is one I did look up because I knew you were going to ask. I didn't guess that you were going to ask what principality was. Right, a semi-constitutional monarchy is power shared between a democratically elected prime minister and a monarch. So they have...
so the prince has a bit of heft.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Big time.
Unlike our mob.
Mob, yes. The monarch, the prince of Liechtenstein, one of the wealthiest in Europe, wealthiest monarchs in Europe, worth about 3 or 4 billion.
So I wonder why he isn't a king then.
Well, again, we'll come to that.
Okay, I'm looking forward to finding it.
Yeah. Liechtenstein facts.
I'm interested. Licked me. Oh, no,
yeah.
don't. I regret that
I'm going to
immediately.
lick you right good. So, facts. Number 1. They make 20% of the world's false teeth.
Oh, wow. That's the thing. If you're a microstate, you've got to find a niche, right?
Yeah.
False teeth. I don't know how they chose
It's
it.
a lot of false teeth.
I can respect that.
So if you've got false teeth, there's a good chance that they might have been made in Liechtenstein. Women couldn't vote in Liechtenstein until 1986.
86?
Yeah,
Good
a
Lord.
bit late, wasn't it? Famous in 2011 for putting the whole country on Airbnb to rent for £40,000. That's $70,000 a night. So you could rent the entire country.
So you could just wander around and say, I'm going to stay here tonight, and someone would have to go, yeah, I guess you can stay.
It doesn't quite work that way. I think you stayed in the castle in Verdus.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, you just got treated as essentially the prince for the day, or the princess for the day.
And how much again? Sorry,
there was like a ceremonial, you get given a key to the country, and you could pretty much do whatever you want. Wherever you go, you're allowed in, and you can do what you like. But yeah, you don't kick everyone out of Liechtenstein. Just sit by the border waiting for you to get your night out of the way.
I'd kind of be inclined to do that. I could pick up my key and go, right, you lot, get out. This is my country. I've rented this. This is mine.
I understand it's not available to rent anymore.
Oh,
So I can only imagine the last tenants wrecked the place.
It was that party they had, wasn't it? Yeah. It was a real rager.
It all started, I think, because Snoop Dogg wanted to rent it for a pop video, or a music video, or a rap video, or a hip-hop video, whatever Snoop Dogg does.
Hashtag down with the kids. You can find us on Twitter and MySpace.
Hello, fellow kids. Right, their national anthem. Do you know their national anthem?
Is it Liechtenstein, you're the best. We love you because we like dentures. I'm just speculating slightly there.
It's not, no. It goes a little something like this.
Hold up, mate. That's Thief, that. That is the national anthem for the United Kingdom. Weirdly, in America it's known as My Country 'Tis of Thee, and they also use it as a patriotic song.
Oh, there you go.
So they nicked our anthem.
Well, yeah, and it
Or
caused...
did we nick that? I
caused
should
a little
probably
bit of
acknowledge the possibility.
It's entirely possible. It caused a little confusion. There was a football match between Northern Ireland and Liechtenstein where both of the national anthems were played prior to the game. But of course, it was the same anthem. Right, history of Liechtenstein,
Okay.
or Liechtenstein, or Liechtenstein. Prehistory, 5,300 BC, Neolithic farming settlements start appearing in the Alpine valleys. 450 BC, Iron Age cultures. Roman times, 50 AD. Julius Caesar defeats the Alpine tribes, bringing a whole bunch of Romans to the area, under control there.
Aqueducts.
Viaducts,
All the ducts.
mallard ducks. 100 AD, a military road is built all the way from Milan, in Italy, to Bregenz, which is on Lake Odyssey, and it's where the tributary is, or where the Rhine River starts.
Okay.
Or ends, rather. So that's Bregenz. You start seeing settlements in modern Schaan. 2 legionnaires die. Publius Cavidius Felix and Numerius Pomponius. They both die. And we know that because we found their buried helmets in 1887, which had their names on.
I like to think that Pomponius will be favoured by Paul Dursley.
Yeah, Numerius Pomponius as well.
It might be his Roman name, actually.
Right, 260. So 160 years later, all the Roman camps are destroyed by the Alemanni. They are a Germanic people who then settle in the area. So we're coming towards the end of the Roman time. And we enter the early Middle Age. So about 300 years later, the Alemanni are defeated by the Frankish Empire.
The Franks, yes, we call them.
We do, yeah. Barbarian kingdom. later became France. The Frankish king, Charlemagne, dies 300 years later, 843 AD, and the region is divided into three. So we have West Francia, becomes the Kingdom of France later. Middle Francia becomes Italy, and East Francia becomes the Kingdom of Germany. Germany itself is then split into 5 duchies, or duchies. I'm sure Dursley's shouting at the radio. He's like, it's a bloody duchy!
That's for you, Paul.
Yeah. And that includes, one of the duchies is Swabia, which is where Liechtenstein, modern Liechtenstein is.
Okay.
So Liechtenstein didn't exist at this point. It is part of Swabia. And they elect a king, a German king. So now we enter the High Middle Age. This is around 1000 AD. And that German king they've elected, his influence is starting to wane, and the Holy Roman Empire is starting to sort of stretch itself, take a bit more precedence and power from people. So 1100, which is where we are, because we're in 1100 to 1002, within the Duchy of Swabia, 4 houses rule. Okay. And of those 4 houses, the Kyburgs are one. You've probably heard of the Habsburgs.
Absolutely.
They were one of the other houses. Well, the Kyburgs were another. And they were a dynasty that ruled in an area which includes Schallenberg and a little place called Verdus.
Verdus.
Yeah, so 2 territories, Schallenberg and Verdus.
This is getting a bit Game of Thrones now. I like this. The houses against each other.
Exactly, yeah. So this is big down to tiny. 40 years later, so 1140, there's a family living in southern Austria, so the lower parts of Austria. They're living in their castle, and they are called the Liechtensteins.
Or
the Lichensteins. Or the Liechtensteins. And they spend their time just buying land, advising the Habsburgs, basically having very little power, relatively speaking. They're sort of middling people that just sort of hang around in the right circles. And in fact, 300 years later, Karl I of Liechtenstein sides with the Holy Roman Emperor in a political battle. And the Holy Roman Emperor says, you know what? You're kind of cool for being on my side. I'm going to reward you. And he makes him a prince, which is known as a Fürst.
A first?
Yeah.
So when you called him Karl the First,
which is a verse.
Does that Karl because he was the first of the Karls, or is he Karl the First?
I think he was Karl of the First.
Or is the first?
Yeah. No, he's Karl First, the First.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was pretty straightforward.
Right, yeah, my mistake. I was just not paying attention.
Yeah. Karl the First is made the first prince.
Right.
Yeah, and he starts the Liechtenstein monarchy. It's 100 years later when Karl's grandson, Hans Adam I, buys Schallenberg and Verdus, those 2 territories within modern-day Liechtenstein. And the Holy Roman Emperor says, you know what? That's awesome you've bought those. We're now going to call this territory Liechtenstein.
Awesome.
Liechtenstein.
So he bought these towns, right? Or regions, rather. He
Correct.
Bought a region. So
2 regions.
I have bought a house in my time.
Yes.
And there's conveyancing and the surveyor comes in. What do you think the due diligence on the purchase of a region is exactly?
Sure.
You don't have a surveyor out there going, no,
because if it goes wrong, you just bring your army and you demolish them, right?
Right, yeah, okay. So less legal team, bigger military might.
Lots more swords and shields and bows and arrows, yeah. So 1100 to 1200, what's happening in the rest of the world? What's happening?
What's going on?
Who knows? So this is a period where work begins on Notre Dame, or Notre Dame for our American friends, in Paris, and Oxford University is founded.
Oh, wow. That is a long time ago.
A long, long time ago. The Swedes defeat the Finns, forcing them to convert to Christianity. The Tairo and Minamoto clans in Japan have a big old naval battle in which the results in the death of their child emperor, Antoku. Crusaders attack a transport carrying the sister of Al-Nazir Salah al-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub.
Sorry, who was it?
Al-Nasir Salah al-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, also known as Saladin,
yes.
the leader of the Muslim military. Saladin retaliates, defeating the Christian army and laying siege to Jerusalem. So the Christians launch their 3rd crusade, led by a certain Richard the Lionhearted.
We know him.
Yeah, they reach the Holy Land and Richard negotiates a truce with Saladin. That's what's happening in the world.
Okay, busy time for battles and knights and the beginning of Oxford University. That's an interesting one. And Notre Dame. You think of these buildings, and it's hard to imagine them being new. It's like look what we just built. They have a sense of permanence about them, don't they?
What gets me, Oxford University was a spin-off. It was a spin-off of the Paris University. So Paris University, I think, is older, although I've heard before that Oxford University is the oldest.
So I'm taking from this that basically Oxford University is both a spin-off and French.
Okay, so let's talk about some power. Let's talk about hierarchy. I'm going to get to business, but first of all, we need to establish what the structure, the class structure is.
I like the way you said power there. You said power.
Power.
Like a man who really wanted it.
Like someone from the 80s. Right, feudalism. It's the way of life throughout the Middle Ages. It's a system which basically rigs everything for the rich and keeps the poor exactly where they are.
What a crazy system.
Yeah. So it starts with kings, right? Kings own land, and they own land by divine right. God says, you know what? You're a king and you should own all of this land. And they claim taxes for the people that live on it. Makes sense. So they couldn't manage the land. There's a lot of land to look after, so they can't do it all by themselves. So what they do is they start to portion it out to their friends and their families. And you get different sizes of land depending on how popular, I guess, their friends and their families were to them. So you start getting the duchies, you get the counties, you get manors and fiefs and all sorts of different sizes of regions. The nobles, which I guess is the name for the friends and the families of the king, they then function as the middlemen between the royal family and the peasants. They oversee the management of the land, they claim in the taxes, they go around and collect it all, they build armies for the king, they take their cut of all of that, and any other revenue that's generated within that land, it's kind of on them. So the deal is pretty cool. Also, the land stays within the family by blood, right? So it passes down throughout the generations, and you just build up and gradually continue to secure your power within that place, never reaching the point of being a king. Meanwhile, the peasants.
Yeah, my people.
98% of the population. There's a lot of them, and they are the ones that work and maintain the land. And if they could pay taxes, well, that's great. They would be allowed to farm the land to make enough to live. And if they couldn't pay the taxes, they become what are known as serfs. SERFS. And they work for free in exchange for living on the land.
It's a real scam, isn't it?
Yes. Now, basically, they're essentially slaves, right? So serfs were forced to work, and they would be forced to work wherever they were commanded to. So you're going to work over there on that bit. They could be taxed still, and they could be charged for services, and they couldn't even marry without permission. So they were truly owned by the nobles at that point. If a farm was sold, the peasants, the serfs, were sold along with it as part of that sale. Fun times if you're a serf.
Just wake up in the morning and go, I'm a chattel.
Yes. Yeah, hooray. So in exchange for their work and the taxes that they're paying, the peasants got two things in return, which I guess were kind of important. Food, pretty important, and protection as well. So all their taxes and their money and everything goes towards the nobles, and the nobles would make sure that they had an army that would protect them. But that's not all. If you're a peasant in those days, you also had to pay 10% of all your income to the church.
That's what God would have wanted.
For spiritual protection.
Spiritual protection? Just
Yes.
two different protection rackets. In the physical,
exactly.
And you're like, well, at least I've got God. It's like, well, about that.
Well, exactly. And that's actually a really valid point. It's two almost indistinguishable systems that play at exactly the same time. If you're a peasant, you're looking down to having a fork in the road, you've got to pay both. And we'll come to the reason why. Anyway, that 10% of all income, that was known as the tithe.
Hello, Pope's office. The Pope speaking.
Pope, it's me, the Lord.
Oh, God. How are you?
Well, I'm bloody annoyed. I've got prayers coming in left, right, and centre every bloody second. Oh, I've got no food. Oh, my family's starving. Oh, I've got the pox. It's bloody annoying. What's going on down there?
Well, it's the peasants, Lord. Their lives are very, very difficult, but they are mercifully short.
What are you going to do about it?
Well, I could try to address the inequities intrinsic to the feudalist capitalist system.
Or
Cut you in for 5%?
make it 10, we got a deal.
So let's talk about religion. After the fall of the Roman Empire, there was a void, right, in Europe. And so the Catholic Church scampered in and took up a lot of that space. And as a consequence, it became one of the largest landowners in Europe. Therefore, one of the wealthiest and the most dominant power. It has a network of parishes into almost every town and village. It starts to run those estates much like the nobles run their fiefdoms. What you've got is a challenge in 1100 between the kingdoms and the church, who are both like trying to settle who's got the most land and who's got the most power here. And as we said earlier, Holy Roman Emperor is kind of winning that battle.
And everyone's got God on their side. The king's ordained by God, the religious are representing God. Oh, no, God's on my side.
Yes, except the peasants. Okay, so bishops. What do we know about bishops?
Crooks.
Crooks, yeah, a bunch of crooks. So the power of the church is represented by bishops. Okay, the Pope was a bishop at the time. He was the Bishop of Rome. A bishop is a priest who oversees his own church, so his own parish, but he also has other parishes in the region that he looks over as well, like the area manager of a local store.
Which must be difficult if you can only move diagonally.
Yeah. The church which the bishop works in was known as the cathedra.
Head office.
Cathedra, then to become the cathedral. He does report to an archbishop, which does essentially the same thing. So he's the bishop of one larger area without other bishops, and he'll just check in on them and make sure that everything is going to plan.
I've always loved the word archbishop. It's got sort of sinister overtones, isn't it? I'm the archbishop.
So day to day, what does a bishop do? Bishops do bishop stuff. Baptize babies at wedding ceremonies. They hold your last rites if you die. Settle disputes. They hear confessions. They absolve your sins. They ordain priests. They assign clergy to their posts. Bishopy stuff, right? Standard bishop stuff.
So a bishop can create mini bishops, essentially.
Yes. And tell them what to do and where to go.
It's kind of a vampire format, isn't it?
It is a little bit, yeah.
If you kill a bishop, do all the priests that they ordained also crumble to dust?
Yeah. They also uphold church law, which is known as canon law, and in church courts. So these are secular problems that are brought to them, and they're the ones that have to resolve them. So issues like incest, adultery, bigamy, failure to perform oaths and vows, matrimonial cases, legitimacy of children, those sort of things. And they will throw down the hammer on people. But, and here's the other thing that bishops do, and what the church does, is church business. And by church business, we mean things like collecting donations and grants. So there's a lot of networking going around to the nobility and, hey, you know what God would really like right now?
You look like you've had a sinny weekend.
Let's talk about those sins of yours. Yeah, collecting the tithe, the 10%, which we talked about. So that needs to be collected and make sure that everybody's paid that. There is farming. So they were involved in the land as well, usually either by the clergy or rent-paying peasants, so the same principle, serfs. And tolls on roads, bridges, rivers, that sort of thing. They got their fingers in that as well.
I'm still getting mafia vibes from this whole thing. This is church business.
Well, you're not wrong. That's kind of how it is. There's a lot of protection, racketeering going on. So those are your bishops. They're the biggest power that are going on at the time. After that, you've then got abbots, the men that ran monasteries. So, it's one of the most important religious business centres is the monastery. And within our area, so on the Rhine, just 9 miles south of Liechtenstein's border, is Pfaffer's Abbey. Probably not pronouncing that right. Pfaffer's Abbey?
I like Pfaffers. I've just been faffing around.
I'm just going to call it Pfaffer's Abbey. It's spelled P-F-A-F-E-R-S. Pfaffer's Abbey. And it's founded by Benedictine monks in 731 AD. They called it Monasterium Fabarensi, or Beanfield. I guess,
the Italian sounded much more exciting.
Beanfield. Yeah, I guess they built it on a beanfield. Anyway, so the monks who lived there, they followed the Benedictine theology. And what is a Benedictine monk?
I don't know.
Nor did I.
The Capuchins are the ones who drank all that coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You're
thinking of monkeys.
The Franciscans, they're the one who hang out with the animals all day long. So Benedictines, I don't know, are they bald ones who grow hops and make beer and are jolly?
Yeah,
I'm maybe confusing them with Father Christmas. I'm not sure.
So a Benedictine monk is named after Benedict of Nursia, one of the two, Perugia in Italy. Born around 480 AD to a noble family. And he was sent to Rome to study, where when he got there, he was so shocked by the squalor and depravity of Rome in 400 and whatever, 500 probably by that point. He fled south. He ran away and became a hermit. He was like, you know what? I've had enough of all this. And during the time that he was a hermit, he conceives of a religious community based on gentle discipline, strict morality, and a well-ordered routine.
Sounds quite appealing, to be honest. I mean, sign me up so far.
I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but actually, do you know what? Super tempted. I've signed us both up.
Yeah, we're monks now.
That's just tradition for the show. I had to do something. I've signed us both up to a monastery.
That would be awesome. See you next year on...
Silence. Right, so he writes a book called The Rule of Saint Benedict, and it lays down the principles of Christian community life. Several hundred years later is when the church gets its hands on it and turns it into the Order of Saint Benedictine.
But it wasn't him who founded the Order of Monks. He just wrote a guidebook.
Correct. That's exactly right.
And it was 100. Did you say it was hundreds of years?
About 300 years. So he wrote it around about 500 AD.
See, that's remarkable, isn't it? Someone in a library's gone, look at this book. Yeah, it's 300 years old. There's some good ideas here. We should try this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing because it was a practical, down-to-earth guide that people were practicing it, and then the church went, that looks like a good con. We'll have some of that. Anyway, point is, it sort of lacks symbolism. It doesn't have that mystique of the Bible. It is a blueprint, a practical guide for how to live and work with other people. So things like listen, respect, and forgive one another.
Oh, I'm going off it.
Yeah. Don't own material things. No Xboxes.
Oh, man.
Right?
Okay, what else have I got to do?
But you can share wealth and property instead. So you can have a shared Xbox. Right?
Co-op.
Co-op.
Play a couch co-op.
Yeah, exactly. that's cool. So
just being a monk here. Sign me up.
And you should treat that property with care, restraint, and reverence. So if you get yourself an Xbox to share with you and the other monks, look after it.
Right, don't just chuck the controller when you lose.
Exactly.
Right.
Look after it. And recognise that God is nearer to you than you can imagine. It's
almost quite sinister thought, isn't it? He's nearer to you than you can imagine.
Even
makes you want to look over your shoulder, doesn't it?
See him now. Yeah, he's in the ordinary and the mundane. He's in the washing up. He's in the taking the bins out. He's in all of that stuff. In fact, he's more in that stuff than he is in the bigger stuff. So pay close attention to the ordinary tasks.
That's why Jesus keeps appearing in slices of toast and whatnot.
There you go, because he's in the ordinary tasks.
God in the everyday.
So enjoy making those tasks. And yeah, I quite like that. There's something quite beautiful in that.
I think that's really appealing to me. I think a lot of people who sort of are drawn to Eastern religions and the sort of Zen type thing probably don't realise that there's something very similar available here. That sounds like a lifestyle that if you wrapped it up with a bit of Eastern mysticism, you could probably sell it to a really large number of hippies.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so the abbot who runs the monastery and his monks, they aim to be independent and self-sufficient. They make products in-house like beer, like you were saying. They make clothing, household equipment, see pots and pans, things like that. They'll do winemaking as well. So just general in-house products that they're making. So it's a little factory. Pfaffers Abbey is located on the Rhine trade route as well, in and out of Italy. So there's trade going back and forward. So they would have been exchanging their goods, selling stuff, but also buying things on that trade route as well. Alpine farming. They were involved in transforming the environment. Right, so you've got all these Alps and the mountains around them, and they're the ones that convert them. They cut down the trees and they create these sloped pastures for their cattle. So you get these series of vertical pastures all the way up the mountains where the cows go. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. Something that you glanced on last episode, actually. Anyway, and they rely on peasants and the serfs to manage and maintain that for them. To manage and maintain the land.
They're not doing their own homework entirely.
No, it'd be too much for them to do. So, no, you get some of the others to do it. And my guess is they're probably not being paid for that. It's part of their spiritual education. They also have close links with nearby towns. Okay, so they would employ local craftsmen to come in and fix the roof, do a bit of the guttering, whatever the craftsmen do, but also traders as well. They might have employed lay brothers, so monks that didn't live in the monastery but sort of lived in the town. Just were like, yeah, I'm pretty spiritual. I'll help you out. And so their responsibilities were to sort of run the more commercial side of the business. They would sell all the excess beer that they had. They would then go and buy things if they needed them and bring them to the monks.
Just like day monks and boarding monks.
That's exactly right. Yeah, like boarding school. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Anyway, so this all meant, through all these commercial business activities, that they're sharing a huge amount of wealth between them. The success of Benedictine business. Let's just talk very briefly on that. Benedictine theology, as we've both agreed, actually, I could buy into that, right? Well, a lot of businesses across the world actually are. And there are monasteries now that are offering training courses to commercial businesses, entities, organizations, where you can go in and be taught by the monks about Benedictine principles and see how you can apply it to your corporate business. It's kind of exciting. Want to know some of the stuff?
I do.
Okay. So 4 business principles. First is begin with a strong foundation by creating stability. So what they mean by that is remain faithful to one community. Just stay in one place for life. Don't keep moving around, right? Just, I'm here. You know where I am.
Right. These guys hate the circus is what we're saying.
Exactly. Don't be nomadic. Avoid unnecessary and foolish risks. Common sense stuff, right? But it's all about creating stability. That's what they're trying to say. Invest for the long term, i.e. offer an enjoyable workplace, retain your staff, train them up, have good relationships with your customers, but also with the people that you're working with. So rather than trying to win new customers all the time, try and keep the ones you've got, right? Keep those relationships good. Hold on to your values, despite the pressures of competition or shifting marketplace. Makes sense? Introduce ethical principles. By doing so, your workers' lives can be improved and see that there's more to life than profit. So they're encouraging a workplace where actually you want to work there, not because of the work itself, because it's a job to do, but because actually you're getting something more from it. You're part of a much bigger vision.
See, I've got a lot of time for that. I think one of the things I find particularly tiresome about a lot of employers is that they have this sense that everybody there has to have a driving passion for what you do. But at the end of the day, some people just make widgets, right? And everyone has a job more often because they need a job rather than they have a driving, burning desire to create the widget of the future. So the thought of saying, well, actually, the benefit is in the community and your business, God is in the everyday.
God is in the mundane, yeah.
Is quite an appealing prospect to me. It feels a bit more honest, to be honest, than just, have the passion for corporate ink.
Right, exactly, yeah. Or just the cynical side of business, which is, an enjoyable place where let's get the guys motivated and working so that they can make us more money. That this is a group effort, that everybody can, benefits from the work that we're putting in. This isn't just one person benefiting from it. Anyway, people are your most valuable resource. It's principle number 2 of Benedictine. So people of all social classes with different gifts and personalities should be thrown together in equal partnership, working as part of a team. The leader must be tender as a father and strict as a master. Build a community based on communication, listening, forgiveness, and mutual obedience. And this is my favourite part. So this is principle number 4, and I think perhaps the best one. Transform yourself to transform your workplace. They recommend that you spend equal time on the body by working, the mind by reading, and the spirit by praying. So those are the 3 things that you should focus on in equal amounts. Don't do any more work than you're doing reading and praying.
I do none of any of those things, so I am in perfectly equal amounts.
Of 0. So let's talk a bit about nobility.
The nobility or the concept of nobility?
The nobility.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's considered a class below royalty, as we've discussed. It's a group with privilege and social status. It's, as we've said, a hereditary condition passed down by blood.
Hereditary condition. Yeah. I'm afraid you've got nobility.
You've got nobility.
And your children will as well.
Hooray! Yeah, which means it's basically a closed group of people that can be part of this. If you wanted in, let's say, Pete, you were like, you know what, I want to be part of the nobility.
I definitely want to be part of the nobility.
Okay, well, let's see how you'd get in. So you've got a few options. You could forge documents to say, you know, oh yeah, I'm part of a whole long lineage of very rich and wealthy people.
I could Photoshop something together.
Exactly. You could buy yourself in. So you could buy an exemption from some of the nobles. You just go up to someone and you're like, I'm going to buy your lineage. But you've got to have the money to be able to do that. In response to this, they start to introduce family names and crests. So prior to this, prior to sort of 1100s, you've got just, you are Peter, and that is it. From 1100s onwards, the families, these nobles start to introduce family crests and surnames. So I am, or you are, Peter of Goddard.
Yeah, I'm probably Peter Goatherd, in all honesty. So I don't think they'd be looking at me too closely.
Peter Goatherd. Yeah, I never put that together, but that's probably what it was, right?
I don't know. It's God is brilliant.
Goatherd. So you would require more evidence and proof to be able to try and wangle your way into the nobility from that point. They were shoring up those little back doors that people were crawling in through. So anyway, the best ways of advancing your career into the nobility is networking. That's one of the best ways. So you get yourself into the court, schmooze a whole bunch of people, get somebody to like you, and then eventually, hopefully, as we've discussed, like with Hans I, you might find yourself the recipient of a lovely little gift. So that's one way of doing it. And the other way is to have an advantageous marriage.
Now we're talking.
A bit more likely.
I could charm my way in.
Exactly.
I'll wash up, leave the goats behind.
Yeah. So even if you do get in, though, so let's say you were managed any one of those four things, really, you're now a noble, a new noble, without any lands or prestige. So what are you going to do? Well, what was happening at this time is private enterprise. So a lot of the new nobles were rushing into the cities because they didn't have the lands to back them up. And they started their own commercial enterprises there.
So as this business is, in my mind, I'm thinking sort of trading. So presumably you've always had someone who's the blacksmith and the cobbler and those kind of
I'm talking
services.
Way above that. Yeah,
you're talking
organizations.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But early 1100s, the hierarchy within our area, soon to be Lichenstein, was pretty established, right? So you had God, you had the Holy Roman Emperor, or the German king, you've got the rulers of the Duchy of Swabia, you've got the Kaiberg dynasty, under that you've got the Count of Bregenz. When we spoke about Bregenz, that was that little port on Lake Obersee,
yes,
which links onto the Rhine River. So the Count of Bregenz, nice guy, but he has no heir, no male heir. But he does have a daughter, a lovely lady called Elizabeth. I say a lovely lady, she might have been horrible. We don't know. But she was called Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth marries a pretty much unknown fella, a guy called Hugo II of Tübingen.
Oh, do just say that again for me. I enjoyed that.
Hugo II of Tübingen.
Oh, I can see why she went for him. Just for that. You'd be laughing every day.
Yeah, big old belly on him, hasn't he? Maybe a big old moustache as well, like a walrus moustache. Hello, I'm Hugo too. Tübingen. Anyway, he, because he marries Elizabeth, he inherits the entire family territory all the way along the Alpine Rhine. So he doesn't have this problem. He doesn't need to run into the city and start his own business. He is just taking what's been gifted to him. So he's new nobility, but he's almost immediately acquiring the sort of the prowess. In fact, within 2 or 3 generations, so presumably him and Elizabeth did the do.
Moving on.
And within 2 to 3 generations, his family take the noble name of Verralberger. So Tübingen disappears, I guess, perhaps because everyone laughed at him every time he said it.
That's it. I'm losing the Tübingen.
And he takes on the Verralbergers. And the Verralbergers are now in control of that entire Alpine Pass trade route, pretty wealthy area. And all the estate that surrounds it, all those mountains and everything else. We're now talking about the area that is essentially Liechtenstein.
And owning a mountain.
Yeah, or a range of mountains. Yeah. So they collect the taxes, they collect the tolls of the people that are traveling through, and generally they just become super wealthy. Enough so that they build themselves a fortress, Schloss Verdus, which is Castle Verdus. And it's right there, it's still there today. It's up the mountain slope, looking down over the town.
Sensible placement.
Yeah, it is. But also you could see the Alps, you can see the trade routes, you can see the Rhine River. It's really well placed. The walls have got a thickness of up to 4 meters, 13 feet. So pretty thick walls. So they were expecting, potentially trouble. And an entrance that was 11 meters high, 36 feet high.
Why did it need to be so high?
You're showing off, aren't you? I'm so powerful, look at me.
And all that giraffe trading.
And all the giraffe trading, yeah. So it's on a strategic point, at the castle, and it's been there, like I say, since the 1100s. It's been renovated several times, so there's only a few bits that are left of the old medieval parts of the castle, but it's there. And the prince today lives with his family within Castle Verdus, and it's off limits to tourists. You can't have a little wander around, but they do have an open house garden party. So it's not an open house, it's an open garden. So everybody goes up there and hangs out with the prince and his family, and they have a big old firework display, and that's every 15th of August.
Oh, that's amazing. So if you are listening, Prince, which doubtless you are,
sure.
Ryan and I would be delighted to attend your garden party.
For sure.
Just drop us a line at hhepodcast@gmail.com.
I get a feeling like you're trying to network with the nobles.
I've learned a thing or two from this podcast already, Ryan, as you can tell.
Or catch up with his daughter.
Oh, yes. Also, sexy ladies out there with large tracts of land, do write in.
Okay, which takes us to the peasants. Last but not least.
Yeah, these are my folk, really, let's be honest.
The peasants. Yeah, poor old peasants. So in much of the region that we're in, as across most of Europe, 90% of the population are living on rural farms or villages. Okay? That's a lot of people. And most of those farms are on either the noble or the monastic, yeah, estates. So it's either like the religion side or it's like the king's side.
It's not your land.
It's not your land if you're a peasant, yeah. And as a rule, most peasants were given 10 acres of land to farm. Sounds a lot, but it's actually too small to even feed themselves. So they were given land that was deliberately smaller than would feed them and their families. 12 acres was about the minimum that was needed to sort of feed themselves and also have enough to be able to sell some small amount of surplus.
So this was just to keep them desperate, was it?
Yes. So what that meant is that a lot of these peasants also had a second occupation. Blacksmiths, the shoemakers, butcher, baker, weaver, stonemason, the wheelwright, the tanner, the tax collectors. There might also have been a bank or a money lender, and that's usually run by the Jewish community. Money lending was forbidden for Christians. Some would have had their business run from their own home, so the ground floor of their home would present it onto the street, and they would have had a little stall with a little wooden awning over the top, and people would just rock up and buy whatever it was that you were selling from there. Money wasn't used really at this period of time. It existed, but it was more for larger purchases. This bartering is where we're at. I'll give you these eggs for that lamb's leg, that sort of stuff.
Bad news for the lamb.
Yeah. And talking to lamb, we're talking about farming and cattle, lambs, pigs, sheep. Those are the big ticket items in our Alpine region here. The farmers and the serfs would rotate their crops, rye and barley. And while they were doing that, they would also then put the cattle out to pasture as well. So the focus was more on the cattle rather than on sort of the vegetation.
Vegetation.
What would you call it?
Arable
Crops.
farming, I suppose.
The crops.
Grain.
Yeah. Okay. And so what they do is when they were taking these cows out to pasture, they would take them up the series of mountains. So depending on the time of year, if it was winter, as we've discussed, they would bring them down into the valleys, and during the summer months where it was obviously hotter up the sides of the mountains, they would take the cattle up the top, and that is vertical transhumance. The quality of the meat and the milk that comes from this particular area is extraordinarily good, and it was making a lot of money. Cattle production becomes an investment opportunity, in fact, for a lot of the nearby town. So Zurich, for example, you got some of the guys with a bit more cash. They're starting to invest, and they buy cattle and give it to the peasants and serfs to look after for them.
Is this because the pastures have lovely green alpine grass? And
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's the weather. It's just all of it combines
where a cow wants to be.
Very beautiful thing, yeah. And so, yeah, what happens is you start getting these foreign cattle being introduced as well. So these investors are like, you know what, I want a better type of cow to be fed this great grass and drink this fresh mountain water. And so they start to introduce their foreign cattle in. And the farming communities don't like this very much.
Bloody foreign cows taking our jobs.
That's exactly right, taking our jobs. And and so what happens is you actually start to get there are several wars that happen in Switzerland and this region that were fought over the wrong type of foreign cattle being brought in and mixing. Anyway, so while we're talking about cattle, let's talk about the milk that they produce. Now, we know that it's hard to transport in those days because it's hard to keep fresh food, cool for long enough in those days. It just goes off. So milk is no good, goes off pretty quickly. But cheese, butter, those things don't. They travel quite well. Also, they preserve over the summer and the winter, right? So you can make a lot of it and you can make sure that you and your family are okay. So the milk that the cows produce is called hay milk or Huhmilch. Huhmilch, yeah. Hay milk, and obviously that's based on the diet that they're eating, the hay, I guess, right? So meadow grass.
That's a shame. I was thought, hay milk.
Hay.
It was the excitement that it generated.
Look what that is. Professional cheese makers were mostly women. And they created over the years, 30 different sort of Alpine cheeses, which still kind of hang around today. They've been handed down over the generations, and they're still out there. The local to Lichenstein, still made today, still sold. It's a local delicacy. Is Verralberger Sauerkäse or Montafona Sauerkäse.
So are these the holy type cheeses you think of when you think of Switzerland, or are they different?
No, different. Soft cheese. It's almost like a brie, I guess. I mean, I don't really do cheese very much, but yeah, that's what it looks like anyway. It's a byproduct of butter production. So it's made from skim milk, and it was eaten by the peasants as well. So everybody was eating Surikis. It's sour milk, sour cheese is what that means, by the way. And you'd serve it with vinegar, oil and onions, or black bread, or eaten with potatoes.
So I've got to say, if you had sour cheese, onions and vinegar for dinner,
yeah,
maybe
sour
not be
cheese.
kissing these ladies after all.
Yeah. And so there you go. Right. So the final thing then really is to sort of wrap this all up is the markets. So you've got your cheese from your cows that are paid for by the nobles or in fact the monastery, that are cared for by the serfs, and this all comes together in the marketplace. So the markets sell all of that fresh local produce. You're talking your meats, your veg, your bread, your cheeses, that sort of stuff.
You're starting to sound like a celebrity chef who's gone to turn a local restaurant around. You need fresh local produce.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, sellers of meat and bread tend to be the men, and those that sold eggs, dairy stuff, poultry, and even ale were the females. Anyone who wanted anything beyond food-related stuff, so you're talking like your cloth or wine, you had to be prepared to walk to the sort of the nearest town, which could be potentially days away. Marketplaces were weekly, sometimes twice weekly, but I'm going to guess weekly in Verdus because it's quite small. It was the highlight of the town. Big community event. Everybody is there, from the nobles, the monks, and the peasants.
You don't want to miss market day.
You definitely don't want to miss market day. So the peasants get to sell all their goods, and help them sort of, survive.
Live, eat, all those great things.
The nobles get to sort of wander around and show off all their wealth. They also get the income. It's a regular income because it's a weekly event from the fees that the peasants are paying for their market stall, because got to pay for the rent of the stall, right?
Obviously.
Yeah. And in fact, they often had it right outside their castle for that very reason, under the guise that you're protected. Your stalls are protected if you're outside of the castle.
Yeah, the word protection just continues to have sinister overtones, doesn't it? You're protected.
If you don't do it here.
Thank you for the money.
Yeah, exactly. And then the monks would come along and they would buy a few things that they needed, but it was often only things that they weren't really making themselves. So things like salt, that they couldn't get anywhere else. So they would come along. Although they saw it as kind of a spiritually dangerous journey going to the market, which I found was interesting. They would
those gaudy tomatoes and flashy crops.
Well, there was a sexy undertone to the markets as well, and people getting drunk and rowdy. This was a very raucous place. But they would only ever go in pairs. So the monks had to go together, I'm guessing holding hands like little kids.
It's dangerous to go alone.
And
Last week, Brother Francis came back with too much cheese.
And they would never travel more than 3 days together.
That's fair. I don't think I would travel more than 3 days to go to a market. That's just sensible.
Brother John, we must make haste. Already our day has passed and the market is due to close. Let us divide our efforts and collect our provisions.
Brother Samuel, the abbot said we must always be together in the market.
But time is short and the Lord will protect.
Okay then.
Hello, brother.
Who are you?
Are you looking for provisions?
Well, I am looking for provisions, but who told you that?
Oh, I know lots of things, my old son, lots of things. Like, for example, you might like a cabbage.
I enjoy, and all the brothers enjoy, all the Lord's vegetables.
Well, look at these cabbages here. I've got so many cabbages. I've got better cabbages round the back, my old son. Come and have a look at these cabbages.
They're fine cabbages, but I must just make provisions for the monastery. It's just more than cabbages.
Look, I've also got radishes. And brother, come have a look at the radishes. They're
very nice radishes.
very juicy radishes. Let me just put these in your sack. Come round the back and let's sort them.
They're very rosy radishes, but no, I must get provisions for the whole of the monastery. Cabbages and radishes is not enough.
How about some honey? I know you like honey. Come round the back and taste my honey.
Well,
There's all sorts of delicious, golden, sweet honey.
I think the brothers do enjoy honey. It's very nutritious.
Come round, just try my honey. It's round the back, fresh from the hive.
Maybe I'll just pop round and have a little look.
Just one
there
little
couldn't be any
taste.
harm in it,
It'll
could
be
there?
fine, brother. Come this way.
Okay, I'll just have a look.
Brother John! Brother John! Brother John, where are you? Brother John! Brother John! Brother John! And there you go. That's me. That is Lichenstein. We are done.
And business.
Any
Big
questions?
business in the market.
Yeah.
No, that was really interesting. You forget just how dreadful life was for most people.
Yeah, it was truly awful, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that was...
It was just hard, I think. I think, I guess you just got used to it. That was life. I'm guessing some people had it harder than others. I think most people got by, barely.
The underlying sort of challenge and the problem is that as a peasant, or even worse, a serf, there is just no way out. You just can't get ahead. You don't own any of the things that you need. You can't go, I'm going to start up a business because you've got no capital. You can't say, I'll do my own farming because you're working someone else's land. You just can't get out from under that, which is...
And if you did get out of it, it was by exception.
You forged yourself some nice papers. That seems like a good route to me.
Yeah, I guess so. Until you get caught. So it's that time, isn't it? We've got to hit the doors later.
Before we do, I do want to thank you. That was really interesting. These older periods are really challenging, I know, and you really brought it to life. So thank you very much for a very entertaining and interesting cast.
Thank you very much.
But as you say, yes, we should turn to the doors later and discover what's on the table for next week, what's on the agenda, the notice board.
Let's find out what your country, time, and topic are for next week. How about them?
Do it.
Right. Here we go.
Okay, Ryan. What's my country?
I just want it to be away from the Alps.
Yeah, really, seriously.
Right?
It's like,
No,
it's
Switzerland.
Switzerland.
The Alps is great. Switzerland. Please, now I kind of hope it's Switzerland or Swaziland. Okay, here we go. Right, so Peter, your country for next week is Mozambique.
Mozambique. Well, we've made it out of the Alps at least.
I don't know where it is. So it could be in the Alps, as far as I know. Okay, and your time period?
I'm hoping modern. I want to go modern.
Okay, time period is 2000 to 2005.
Yes! Awesome.
It is modern. And okay, so subject. And the subject is religion.
Oh, that's interesting.
Key topic from today's subject is leached into next one.
Yes, this is interesting. Okay, religion. Wasn't one of those ones I was shooting for with the modern time frame, but I'm sure there is something out there.
Religion in Mozambique from 2000 to 2005 AD.
Challenge accepted, sir. So, thank you very much for listening. Thank you everyone out there. If you've liked anything, hated anything, or just want to talk to us, you can get in touch with us at hhepodcast@gmail.com. We do a daily little history fact that you can see on Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn, even if you want, all at hhepodcast. Or you can come and visit our website, which is hhepodcast.com.
That's right. And don't forget our weekly after-show podcast, The Verdict, with our lovely Paul Dursley, who joins us every week to criticise us and tell us where we've gone wrong on these particular episodes. So do listen in for The Verdict.
So once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for coming. And thank you, Ryan, for an excellent podcast. We'll see you all next week on...
History happened everywhere.
So, Ryan.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah, I was wondering, mate. You know how I put a lot of work into the podcast?
You do, yeah. Work a lot all the time.
Yeah, you know you don't pay me anything.
Nope, nothing.
No, yeah, and you know how I'm allowed to go in the fridge sometimes and make myself a sandwich?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was wondering, am I your serf?
Yeah, you are.
Oh, right, okay, cool. Can I still sleep in the bathroom?
Yeah, for 10% of the sandwich.
Oh, will you take crust?
No.